r/ask Reddit. What is a true fact so baffling? It should be false. People were deliberately infected with malaria to cure their syphilis, and the man who developed this treatment, Julius Wagner Jauregg, received the Nobel Prize for it. The extremely high fevers of the malaria infections killed the syphilis bacteria. Then the patients were cured of the malaria using quinine. Quinine is the reason tonic water glows under black light. Today I learned tonic water glows under black light. From 1613 and 1620 a samurai traveled to Rome by way of Mexico. During this time, Shakespeare was still alive. Virginia had been founded for around a decade. Galileo was accused of heresy, and Pocahontas arrived in England. He met the Pope. He was made a Roman citizen. His name was Hisekura Tsunenaga, and was the last Japanese person to officially visit Europe until around 1860. Another fun samurai fact: Oda Nobunaga had a black man as an official samurai. This was in 1581. Where exactly the man was from, Mozambique is most historians guess, and what his name was weren't recorded, but the Japanese gave him the nickname Yasuke. He'd come over to Japan on a Portuguese missionary boat. By all accounts he and Nobunaga got along great, and he fought in several major battles of Japan's Warring States period. Sadly, after Nobunaga's death, Akechi Mitsuhide declared Yasuke to be not a man but an animal and had him sent to a nearby Christian church that had been established by missionaries. There is no record of what happened to him after that. Man, Akechi is a ducking a-hole. The longest time between two twins being born is 87 days. I see these threads a bunch, but this answer has me interested. Gonna look up the source on that one. Kilkenny, Ireland, gave birth to twins Amy Ann and Kate Marie. Katie Elliott 87 days apart, making them the twins with the longest interval between their births. The twins were born at Waterford Regional Hospital. Amy was born prematurely on the 1st of June 2012 and Kate followed on the 27th of August. Guinness World Records. Seems like that would be a shitload of stress for the unborn twin in the womb. As long as they are polyzygote, non-identical, meaning two placentas, two amniotic barriers, etc. Then yes, there was probably a crazy amount of jostling, but as long as the water didn't break, the second one is good to simmer indefinitely. Saddam Hussein was an erotic romance novelist in his spare time as the dictator of Iraq. Source: is that why his character is such a romantic in the South Park movie? Come on, guai. Cheetahs can't roar, but they can meow like house cats. There were more planes destroyed in World War II than there are currently intact planes on Earth today. I mean, everyone was making a shit ton of planes. There is an extremely rare condition called Stone Man syndrome. It causes any smallest damage done to tissue to regrow into a bone. Speaking briefly, people affected by this sickness slowly turn into living statues as they get older. Wikipedia. Surgical removal of the extra bone growths has been shown to cause the body to repair the affected area with even more bone. I'll never sleep again. Adult patients eventually have to decide on what position they wish to predominantly take for the rest of their lives. This was creepier for me. I'll take the coffin pose please, and if you could, just go ahead and throw me the duck in it because I'm done. More people died making the V2 rockets during World War II than were killed by them. Another fun fact about V2 rockets: Germany was facing a large issue with rocket fuel shortages during the project because people kept drinking it. The fuel was made from 70% ethyl alcohol and 30% water, distilled from potatoes. It was the most economically viable fuel at the time, since they were already very low on other fuels. To stop workers from drinking it, they denatured the alcohol, essentially poisoning it, but people kept drinking it anyways and getting extremely ill. This simply caused people to start leaving the V2 program, suggesting that they were only in it for the free alcohol. This also means that any alcohol over 70% ABV is stronger than actual World War II rocket fuel. Giraffe seat bones. A 500-pound, cigarette-smoking, beer-drinking brown bear named Wojtek was enlisted and served in the Polish army during World War II. Private Wojtek helped the Polish win the brutal Battle of Monte Cassino, and was even promoted to corporal. Following the war, he retired in Scotland. Amazing share. I will name my firstborn son Wojtek. Wojtek is a totally normal Polish name, so Polish people will just assume he's Polish. And beer drinking brown bears will assume he's a bear. We live many times closer to the last dinosaur than the first and last dinosaur did to each other. And Cleopatra lived closer to the first man on the moon than to the time the pyramids were built. If every single person on the entire planet took part in a rock paper scissors contest, where everyone paired up and played, losers were knocked out and winners stayed on etc., you would only have to win 33 times in a row to beat all 7.53 billion people on the planet. When Mt Everest was first measured, it was exactly 29,000 feet. It was reported as 29,002 because exactly 29,000 was not believable. I'm picturing someone standing at the bottom with a tape measure and someone running all the way up with the other end. To scale, the distance between a nucleus and orbiting electron is 16 times longer than the distance between the Sun and Pluto. There's a universe inside us. There are many universes inside us. When a woman with breast implants is cremated, the implants will melt into goo. It drips to the bottom of the furnace and needs to be cleaned up once cooled. This almost sounds like a medieval method of testing for witchcraft. There is no universally accepted definition of vegetable. It's a cultural and culinary term and varies from place to place. If my son hates it, it's a vegetable. Problem solved. Oxford University predates the Aztec Empire by over 200 years, and, for fun, one of my favorites, woolly mammoths were still around at the time the Great Pyramids in Giza were built. TSA's fail rate is over 80%. I personally know someone who in his carry-on accidentally packed a loaded handgun, made it on the plane, and was so freaked out when he landed, he UPS'd it back home and took a Greyhound bus after his trip. A total friend of mine did the same with a folding knife. I know a dumbass that flew internationally with a handgun in his checked luggage, on accident, but still a dumb a-hole. He left out of Florida heading for South Korea with a layover in Japan. The Japanese found it and he was arrested and spent over 2 weeks in jail. They let him go. Nintendo was founded in 1889. Before video games, Nintendo ran sex hotels in Japan. If you're launching from Earth, the most difficult place to reach in the solar system is the Sun. The reason for this is that to fly directly into the Sun you need to first launch from Earth, and then remove all of your orbital velocity around the Sun. Anything less will just put you into a different orbit around the Sun rather than directly into it. The amount of power required for that to do it directly is basically impossible currently. As an alternative, you could, for relatively little power, fly all the way out to Pluto distance, slow down much less, and then fall back into the Sun. The trade-off being the travel time is now about 90 years. There are other in-between paths that could get you there for different balances of energy and time, but all of them are tougher than getting basically anywhere else in the solar system with an equivalent balance. There's a mission currently traveling to study the Sun, the Parker Solar Probe. It won't be flying directly in, but plans to make the closest passes than any probe ever has. It's going to make 7 passes by Venus to shed speed so it can get closer and closer to the Sun. The full flight time is planned as just less than 7 years. As of this post, they are 1 week shy of a year in. President John Tyler, born in 1790, has 2 living grandsons. A similar one I like is that there is a living person who is the daughter of a US Civil War veteran, at least as of 2017. And she gets to draw a Civil War veteran's pension. It's pretty well known by now, but calculators today have more computing power than Apollo 11. We got to the moon with slide rulers and huge balls. If a hydrogen atom was the size of a huge ball, how large would an electron be? Horses can't vomit. Rats are also unable to vomit. This incidentally is why rat poison works. They have no way to rid their bodies of it before enough builds up to kill them. If Earth was a basketball, to scale the moon would be a tennis ball. It would orbit around 7.5 meters away, which is a lot farther than most people think. If the nucleus of a hydrogen atom was a tennis ball, to scale the electron would orbit at about 2,500 meters away. There is no ball small enough to compare to how small electrons would still be at this scale. There is no good metric for the number of languages on Earth. This is mostly because linguists cannot agree on what constitutes a new language and what constitutes a dialect of an existing language. The best current metric of how many languages exist is the number of translations of the Christian Bible. Fun little anecdote about the Bible translations into obscure languages. A missionary from our church works for a mission that translates the Bible into languages heretofore untranslated and adapts the books and chapters into an audiobook app. He was in a taxi in Kenya and asked the driver what his language was. The driver told him in English that he spoke Swahili. The missionary pressed him and asked if he spoke a local tribal language. The driver said he did and referenced an obscure language he was sure the missionary wouldn't know. The missionary pulled up that language on the app and started playing the audiobook from some passage in the Bible, whereupon the astonished driver proclaimed, "That's my home tribe's language. And that's my cousin's voice." Just a funny little story that your comment reminded me of. The Tyrannosaurus Rex lived closer in time to us than it did the Stegosaurus. Yep, cause it was afraid of those spikes. The Thagomizer. Even if 99% of Earth's population thought you were unattractive, 76 million people would still find you attractive. There are more trees on the Earth than stars in the Milky Way. Every time you shuffle a deck of cards, you've probably made an entirely unique order, as compared to every other shuffle in history. You can fit every planet between the Earth and Moon, including all the gas giants. But if you lined up all of Jeff Bezos's money from end to end, it wouldn't fit between the Earth and Moon. It could go to the Moon and back 34 times. Jeff Bezos has enough money to make a ladder to the Moon, and to make it out of money. In dollar bills or pennies? Dollar bills. Jeff Bezos's pennies could go to the Moon and back roughly 207 times. Ireland was a net exporter of food during the Great Potato Famine. That's what caused the famine. The Brits exported all the food and the Irish were left with only one small kind of potato for themselves, which then was afflicted with disease. Only 4 people have been to the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the ocean. One of those people is James Cameron, the director of Titanic. Didn't he make the movie Titanic as an excuse to visit the actual wreck? In chess there are over 9 million variations after just 3 moves each. 288 billion different possible positions after 4 moves each. In a complete game there are more possible positions than there are electrons in the observable universe. The color orange is named after the fruit. Before, the color orange was called red. This is why people with orange hair are called redheads. If you shrink down our sun to the size of a white blood cell, the Milky Way galaxy would be equal to the size of the continental United States. Space is huge. Sense of smell is molecular, meaning that molecules of what you are smelling are actually inside of your body as a result of smelling them. Think about that the next time you enter a public restroom. You see your nose all the time, but your brain just ignoring it. Well, not anymore. Thanks. You are closer to being a millionaire than Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. Well, between Jeff Bezos and I, we have an average net worth of 60 billion. Sharks evolved before trees did. Trees evolved before the bugs responsible for rotting. That is, bacteria which could eat lignin and cellulose did. Thus when they died, they just fell over in place and lay there instead of rotting. Over time the weight of the upper layers of tree corpses compacted the lower levels, which eventually became the coal we dig up and use today. Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809 and the first dinosaur fossil was discovered in 1819. This means that he went his early childhood without going through his dinosaur phase. Taser is actually an acronym for Thomas A. Swift's electric rifle, TASER. The youngest mother to give birth became pregnant at 4 years old. A black widow spider's web is 12 times the tensile strength of steel. In the last 3,000 years, there were only 268 years in which there was no war in the world. The phrase plastic surgery has nothing to do with the material. Plastic surgery as a field predates the development of plastics by 70 years. The two terms simply share a Greek word root meaning sculpted or reshaped. We live closer to the lifetime of Cleopatra than she did to the building of the Great Pyramids. This is closer to false every time I hear it. In Florida it is illegal to tie an elephant to a parking meter without first paying the meter as if the elephant were a car. Where in Florida do you find live elephants? Please don't say Disney World and Dumbo. There used to be a radioactive energy drink called Raditha that was in the US market for a decade from 1918 to 1928. Some of the more prominent users had to be buried in lead coffins. The USA is the third most populated nation on Earth. If you were able to add 1 billion people to the US population today, it would still be the third most populated nation on Earth. Greenland extends east of, west of, south of and north of Iceland. Giant squids have a donut-shaped brain so their esophagus can run through the middle. If they try to swallow too large a bite of food they can get brain damage. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.